Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
We are ready to reconvene for our special session on our budget workshop. I'll ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
You are hereby notified that I had called a special session for a budget workshop, which is a continuation from the 5 o'clock meeting to be held in the 5th floor conference room on July 25th. Roll call. Bynum? Here. Walker?
Here.
Townsend?
Here.
McKiernan?
Here.
Regia? Johnson?
Here.
Kane?
Here.
Markley? Here. Walters?
Here.
Philbrook?
Here.
Holland?
Here. All right, so we are here. We have an agenda that we're going to walk through. I'm going to ask the county administrator to walk through it. And the main topic tonight is we need to resolve the decision we're going to make on how many mill levies we're going to reduce this year. One was the proposal in the administrator's budget. We asked for to look at what 2 and 3 would look like. And so we have all that before us tonight, and I'm just going to let Mr. Bach walk through his presentation.
All right, thank you, Mayor. First, just as you noted, we have 3 items really on the agenda. First item will be the yellow sheet, so we will jump right into that. We also have any commission meeting action items, the different actions that you'll take Thursday night. That came out in your agenda package today, but I'll just review those with you later on so we can go through and know specifically what you'll be taking action on. And then any clerical corrections that Reggie and his staff have found in the budget document that just need to be cleaned up and clean pages of that will be put in your document. Okay, what we all came for, yellow sheet. So underneath your packet that handed out in front of you is a closer copy if you can't see what's on the screen. What we did was sit down and I worked with started off the base of what my administrators proposed 2016, 2017 budgets were. The first column in the green is one where I incorporated in a few of the different changes we have. Then I built a scenario, and of course that has a 1 mil reduction in it for 2017. Then I worked in a reduction to cut another 1.1 million out of the budget, or make it an overall 2 mil reduction and present that. And then the third scenario is 3 mil reduction to go through and cut another 2.2 million out of what was proposed. So I will walk through each of these at this point and give you the opportunity to ask any questions, but I'll go through and just kind of lay out the scenarios as they're proposed. In the green section, the first one, I have the well, I will say the big change or add back in is the, probably if I start at the bottom, it kind of explains what I've added into it, and then we can work over the deducts from this budget. So what I did was Chief Ziegler had appeared at one of our first workshops, and we talked about body cameras. That's $1 million project. What we did over the last couple of weeks had gone through this with his staff, and by utilizing the system we put in place last year that Sheriff Ash is using, we think we can make a complete migration from the camera system that's in the cars now and the police over to what the Sheriff's Department's using. This will allow us to do a phase implementation. So its project cost for total implementation will be about $1 million, a little under that. However, we can start with about a $400,000 implementation in 2017. And we would still bid this and determine, but we found that this option does exist this way. But we could go through, this would enable us to change out all our in-car cameras and then put in different into our districts and I believe into our traffic units. Gets us out there at about 56 cameras, and then we could move on to a next phase. So that cost is $400,000. Got that broke out, and it's a little bit unique. We had to do some balancing between fiscal years based on what we published as the maximum budget that we would spend, and that's why you see the number different for the same project between what's in the proposed and what's in the 2 mil change. So it's a $400,000 cost. So in this one it shows 50 and 16, 350 and 17. I put in $50,000 in the home repair funding program. This was the initiative discussed last Thursday. The Commissioner Bynum, and I know you had presented that at about a $200,000. I realize there's a lot of policy development around that, figuring out how the program could work, if we could find a program, you know, ideally one similar to the Shepherd Center or something like that we could fund, or somebody that could do it where we could put money into it. So I put that in as more as a pilot to go after that. And then I believe I heard quite a few comments saying let's try to get money back into AAA for the supplies to the seniors in terms of diapers, dentures, such like that they were looking for. So this budget essentially takes those three items, which is a $500,000 add to come in. So in order to get there, I made the steps of reducing the repayment to water pollution control by $400,000. And this one's consistent across the next one, and that's grant matching fund. When we were building the budget for SOAR, we go out for a lot of grants. We kind of put this as an aggressive line, so we budgeted $100,000 to be able to match into other money. So that's not really a loss of anything. That's just match money that we had held out there, so I've cut that out of it. It reflects the movement of the Argentine Rec Center from 2017 into the 2016 budget. So that's a net wash between the 2 years. So it makes that funding for that project this year. In the quiet zone, the discussion there was how could we move forward with the project management. Don't really have a specific number on that. The discussion around that was how do we do that, and could use the commission special fund project, which is funded at $100,000. So we'd move basically $20,000 from that budget. I just wanted to make that formal into $20,000 here. That's not a net new cost to the budget, but it specifies that's where money would be available for that, noting that we were going to move forward with that, and we'd have to figure out what the project management total cost would be. And that's how this budget's out with what's in place. Everything else that's above would continue to be funded in the budget as originally proposed. In the 2 mill scenario, which starts off the line with a $1.1 million deduction from the loss of a mill rate, additional mill. The new item added to this is the body cameras is in place. We would still do the quiet zone project management, moving that money from the special fund into that. But I would remove from the proposed budget the Parks Ranger position, the intern position, one of the inspectors, the funding to the additional funding to K-State Extension. Would not repay $500,000 to the Water Pollution Control Fund. We recall that was budgeted at $1 million. I do believe we need to show effort to continue to make funding repayments on that, particularly, you know, as we're going through different issues with the consent decree on that. But that would cut that in half. Eliminates the grant matching fund. And then it takes $315,000 away from the street repair, where we put in an additional $700,000 to cash fund additional street repair this year. Or in 17, we would pull out $315,000 from that. Take away some remodeling work that's here in City Hall. And removes the funding to the Argentine Rec Center project. And then that will allow that to balance out between the 2 years. The 3 mill reduction, or an additional $2.2 million over in the orange. It's more orange on our sheet. It's kind of brown up on the screen for those watching on TV. I don't add anything back into it, so there would not be any body cameras or any other additional ones added to it. The quiet zone is still there because that's a net wash between how that works with the special fund. Basically what I've done here is we removed most of the new positions added back in, a lot of these directed toward SCORE, but one is the communications media person. There was some offset to that, but it would basically take it so we're working enough to try to get the 2 newsletters that we'll be doing this letter, so I just went ahead and removed the 3rd newsletter if we're not going to have that person, because I can't seem to get Mike and Edwin freed up enough to work on those. So I removed both those items, the media position and the newsletter. Takes out the horticulturalist position in parks. The parks manager position was there to work through this programming and such for us. The parks ranger, human resources analyst position, the animal control officer, the zoning enforcement officer, the intern position, both the inspectors, the fire aerial, remove that out, and that's an ongoing, and then an animal control or K-State Extension money, one of the animal control vehicles, reduce the demolition mowing money by $125,000. That grant match money is gone. The neighborhood street resurfacing, reduce that by $350,000, and then the remodel money by $69,000, and then the rec center money by $350,000, which takes that project out. Which really, that's a lot of the new initiatives that were put forth in this year's budget. When I went with the 1 mill scenario, I was more apt to say I'm a little more comfortable with one-time scenario costs to cut those out of the budget. When I go to the 3 mill scenario, I felt that 2nd million I needed to take out personnel costs, ongoing costs, because if I'm going to reduce my overall operational cost, I can't have obligated money that's going to be there from year to year. I need to take that back out of the budget, because I also look at those when I look at straight mill rate reductions. That's personnel are affected by that, and as we'll move into next year, contract negotiations, that'll have a direct impact on how much money we're able to put on the table with any of our union groups. And when we cut a couple $1 million out of our future revenue streams, then I want to be able to prepare for that and be able to have serious conversations with you all after the first of the year about how much money we would or would not have. And I can't have ongoing obligations of personnel expenses. So built your 3 scenarios, and I guess this is what we get into. I'd be willing to stand for any questions about decisions, thought process. Really, you know, it's only a week to work on it, but we went through and tried to work on it and really targeted what would be newer type initiatives coming in to how to balance this.
All right, first of all, when does the budget actually have to be approved by? Not our arbitrary schedule. When is the date that we have to conclude it and have it certified to?
We have to send it to the state toward the end of August, like August 25th.
So we have plenty of time to work on it. We've set up this next Thursday as being the date.
It takes us a couple of weeks to finalize once we get it all in hand, clean it all up.
All right. Secondly, you know, I'm having a hard time when people call me at home, and I'm looking here that you're taking out virtually everything that we put in. And if I'm not wrong, isn't that 1.7 million that we've increased it?
Yes.
And yet, we've gotten, and I would ask this question, we've gotten an additional $12 million to spend. That's what I've been told all along. I don't know what the true dollar and cents number is. I've had people tell me that our sales tax is actually running above the projected $12 million. Is that true?
Yeah, I think we're looking at a number that hits right over that.
So, for the public that's watching, and for my edification, because as a commissioner, I don't really have anybody working for me that can come up with an alternative scenario to your proposals here. You've got 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil, and you've made the choices of these various things. Now, there probably are other choices that a person could make to cut out of the budget so that we could cut the 3 mil. And believe me, 3 mil is a bottom of the barrel thing for me, and I've talked to you about this. And I'm trying to be reasonable about, well, looking down the road, but I'm looking at people and they know we've got $12 million. We've got an additional $1.7 million in expenses that we've added in, and we got no money. I'd like somebody to explain to me how it is that anybody ever thought we were going to reduce taxes with $12 million additional money, and that was all just a joke on all of us. I'm very unhappy, as you can tell. I mean, you're cutting little bitty departments of I mean, let alone things that we ought to be doing that we haven't been doing. I mean, you've given us 3 scenarios. I certainly would like to have someone that was working for the commission coming up with some other scenarios, because I don't believe these are the only 3 possibilities. I'm sorry. I just don't.
Well, Commissioner, I'd have to take issue with that. Mr. Bach works for this commission. And so he works for me and he works for this commission. And he is our professional employee who we have asked to prepare the budget. And so I do think that he works for us, and I think his scenarios are legitimate. So I think we need to, I hear you're unhappy, and I think we need to take that into consideration. I do want to hear from other commissioners in terms of what you think. I have thoughts on the 3 proposals. This is the first time I've seen them as well, and that's why we're here tonight to discuss them. So any other commissioners have any input that they'd like to share? Commissioner Bynum.
Just
Can you
curious.
get on microphone,
I see that the cuts were made to the new items, basically. I'm just curious, are there no other savings to be found in other pieces of the budget? I think I understood your explanation, but, you know, it's a big budget book. And I'm just curious if there were other places to look so that we could retain some of both what you brought to us and what we had put forward at the 2 and 3 mil.
Yes, there are a lot of different scenarios. I didn't take it from a perspective that I was to go back and, I mean, you asked me to go back and come back with a scenario, and I guess I try to listen to what I get input on it from 11 different people. I didn't go back into core areas of our operations. That's why I targeted more toward what were new things that we're not doing today. And if there are things we are currently doing that we would rather not do, or, you know, I mean, there are other capital equipment items that I guess I felt like we've deferred on for a while. I mean, we're buying 4 pieces of fire apparatus this year. I feel really good about that, but 4 is one more than I really thought we were going to get to when I was trying to do it. So that's where I looked at one of those. I mean, I can hit stuff like that and cut a couple, or I could have went after the dump trucks, or I could have went into a specific operating department. But I didn't. I mean, I looked and considered some of those.
Sure. So you're helping me at least understand where that other 9 million is, or 6.8, if you will.
Yeah.
There are other additional new expenses in the 2017 budget beyond these items that are on the chopping block in order to bring the 3 mil reduction. And as you state, they are large expenses. It might be helpful just to be reminded of, here's everything that we were doing new, and these are the items we're going to have to let go of in order to have 3 mils.
Okay.
Because I, like Commissioner Walker, was struggling a little bit because I'm going, but it's $12 million, and where is it? So.
I'll weigh in here. I think 1 mil, I've said this from the beginning, was too little. I think we need to go higher than that. The listening tour said clearly 2.5 mils was what people looked at over the 12 million. The survey, again, came in around 3 mils. And so my commitment is to get to 3 mils. And I think that's a legitimate goal. I think that's something we should do. 3 mils will reduce the city mill rate to the lowest in 25 years. I think that's a very nice mark. I think it's fitting with the commitment to lower taxes. I think it's fitting with the information we've received from the public. And I think 3 mils is where we need to go. I have said from the beginning, I would rather see us do 2 mils now and do another mill next year, because I think doing 3 mils all at once, 3 and then 0, I just don't think that's as good. I think we could do 2 mils now, and I think we need to leave. I think we have to do these police cameras. I think that's something that I think the public wants. That's something I'm passionate about, and I think losing that is unacceptable. So I think we need to do that. And I think lowering by 2 mils this year is an excellent start, and next year we can lower it another mil. And then we're on path. The administrator's proposal in green is a 3 mil reduction. It's 1 mil now and 2 mils next year. I don't like that. I'd prefer to do it 2 mils now and 1 mil next year. We're all, and I hear Mr. Walker saying, I mean, 3 mils is rock bottom for you in terms of what you'd be willing to do. I think the question is, do we do all 3 now? Do we do 1 now or 2 now? And my personal perspective is, I think we need to do 2 mils this year out of the box. We're restoring fund balances, which is a fiscally responsible. We're not spending all the money. We're putting a lot of it into the bank. I think that's very responsible. And we're lowering at 2 mils, which is significant if you look at this. You know, that's a, I can't do that math in my head. 2 mils out of 27, that's what, a 7% reduction, 7 or 8% reduction in the city general fund mill levy reduction, which I think is legitimate. and then next year we do an additional 1. So the consensus from the administrator, from this group, has been 3 is the number out of the 12 that we should use to reduce taxes. That's 25% of the money. I think that's a legitimate give. The question remains, all 3 now, 1 now, or 2 now? I would certainly push for 2 now, the yellow one. I think that's the best model, and I think it gets us where we want to go. So, and I have some suggestions around that too. I'm committed to getting to 3, and I think we need to take that seriously. Commissioner King.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Doug, I hate to keep beating the old horse, but and I agree with you, Mayor, that we need those cameras. We need them yesterday. And Doug does work for us. Him and I get along probably 98% of the time. But and I don't see it in here. And just refresh my memory, is there a fire station in here anywhere?
No, there's not a separate fire, well, the fire stations are in there based on, and we had that whole discussion on it, but they are based on how we put together the savings that we generate back within the fire department budget, and that would allow us the revenues to be able to pay for it.
Okay, so somebody else outside the box is going to have to answer this one. Don't you, after so many buildings or whatever, shouldn't there be some sort of study that says you got to put a fire station right here? Because somebody decided to put some over here and some over there. And what I'd like before Thursday is how many people have moved out west from 99th Street out west since 1990. Because we don't need a study to say we're underserved, but I think we need a plan to where we need to set some money aside for whether we build 1 fire station, 2 fires, whatever it is. We need to start doing this now instead of saying, well, we're going to combine 2 over in Turner or 2 over here in the 1st district, you know, because the longer we do this, the more growth's going to happen out there. And I even forgot about the new apartments out there. And I've been bringing this up for 11 years, and I have yet to have either administrator, either mayor say, boy, we really ought to do that.
I have said clearly, I think we ought to do that.
Then let's do it.
And I think it's got to come out of the implementation of the study and the savings in personnel.
But we don't need it. We knew this before any kind of study came around, Mayor.
Sure, but the study gives us the path to fund it, and I think it's great. And
I'm not sure the
committed to it.
path to fund it is there. I think we have a path. There's no funding in the path.
Yeah.
You know, and because the path is there. It is what it is. I didn't make that up the other day about how many brand new homes are out there. And when I talked to the chief the other day, the newer homes go up faster than the older ones because the older ones are built better. So, and I'm going to bring this up every day if that's what it takes, because I don't think anybody's listening. If I had to vote for the budget today, I'd vote no.
All right. Yeah, Mr. Walker, I'll come back to you. Anyone else like to weigh in on the 1, 2, and 3 mil discussion?
Yeah, I will.
All right.
When we were here last time, I liked the 3 mil option, but I don't like the contents of this proposal in that it cuts so much of what I thought were pretty good ideas out of the budget. And I'm kind of on the same page with Hal. You know, if we had not had the $12 million, we still would have had to stay in business. We still would have had to run the government. And one of my fears was that the $12 million would just get absorbed into operations and we would never see a benefit from it. That is tangible. And as many people have mentioned, tax relief was the #1 goal. And I don't think 3 mils is overly aggressive. It's about 25% of the revenue, and I think, you know, some people would have suggested we could have done more than that. I'll bring up one thing. The 2015 budget that we approved projected an $8.6 million ending fund balance. The 2015 actuals had an ending fund balance of $14.7 million. So that's over $6 million of excess fund balance than what we were budgeting. So I would hate if we actually did the 3 mills and cut all these programs, and then at the end of the year found we really had the money to pay for them anyway. But through whatever methods, conservative revenue projecting, or some projects that just couldn't be executed as quickly as possible and therefore the money didn't get spent, that would be a real failure, I think, on our part. If we accepted the 3 mills, we cut all these good ideas out of the budget, and then at the end of the year we found we could have afforded them anyway, even with the 3 mills. And my last point is, we're talking a lot about mill reduction on the city side. There's no mill reduction proposed on the county side. But the county project that I was proposing, the quiet zone, is not funded. Similarly to the other information regarding actual performance, 2015 we projected a ending fund balance of 2.7. Our actual ending fund balance was 5.5 million. And that is approximately 10% of the county budget. So we have a good fund balance. We have a modest request for expenditures for the quiet zone, I believe $65,000 for 3 years, and then 160 something for the permanent financing. It's well within the budget, and I don't see any reason not to give that more consideration. Thanks.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Commissioner Walters kind of hit up more succinctly what I was looking at. It goes to what we have to give up in the in terms of the programs that were put forward for this new budget cycle. For instance, and the people at home may not be able to see in detail the small writing, and I want to commend the budget and the budget staff and the administrator for this. It seems easy to follow here, but I'm concerned that when we start getting into the 2 mil, let alone the 3 mil, so many of the good programs that we were focusing on are going to pay the cost. For instance, SOAR would take quite a few hits. We heard a good presentation about how the internal workings of that program were going to help eradicate blight. And with this mill levy reduction proposals, we have itemized here certain specific things that would not happen if we go to the 2 mil, let alone the 3 mil, like code inspectors, a couple of them. Also, high on the list in almost every district on the listening tour were the improvements of street repair, curbs, and sidewalks. So that's going to take a big hit. Those are things that people can see. Even though mill reduction was a big request, the issue remains how much people are really going to see, even if we do a 3 mil reduction. But they're going to see potholes that aren't repaired. They're going to see grass that's not cut. They're going to continue to see blight. So I have some misgivings with more than a 2 mil reduction. As I said earlier, I like the graduation of it. The 1 mil is a good faith start with progression. But as I look at what we would have to give up, I am uncomfortable with not having a lot of the new things that were included, like the SOAR project, and not being able to move forward with code enforcement, street repair, those very type of basic visible things that people will see.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I said this at the last meeting that we had, that, there's a lot of requests, there's more requests that we need for our county and our city than the 12 million will allow for. And for me, and I guess I'm pulling back on my banking background, I like to try to mitigate as much volatility one way or the other, whether that's going up or whether that's going down. I think that, and I said it before, and I'm probably not going to get a lot of traction on it, but I think it still needs to be said. We need to take a more disciplined, deliberate approach to lowering the mill rate, whether that be by, I think I probably prefer somewhere in the middle at 2%, but I'm not even saying that 3 mills is enough. We might be able to do more over an extended period of time if we have a plan in place that we can be held accountable to make sure that those things happen, which also allows us to mitigate the volatility and not have to cut so much on the front end. So, whether we do 2 this year and 1 next year, I don't have a problem with that, but maybe we do 2 this year and 2 next year. Whatever we decide, I think you need to look at the fact that this is going to be, we can expect the benefit of the $12 million going forward. Is that correct? Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, sir.
So then that means that in years 2, 3, 4, and 5, if we want to look at it that long or that short, we will have the wherewithal, if we stay focused and stay committed to this, to be able to mitigate the volatility and be very disciplined about our approach in that. So that's what I would offer to this commission for your consideration as well.
Commissioner Markley?
So I, excuse me, I also feel most comfortable with the 2 mill option for a couple of reasons. One is that, as you all know, Commissioner McKiernan and I have been deeply involved in this blight issue, and I would like to see those positions be funded, at least the bulk of them, because I think, as Commissioner Townsend said, those are the issues we all get calls about most often, are those blight-related issues, and I think we could see a big impact there. Also, regardless of my own feelings about whether body cameras are a good idea or a bad idea based on statistics as we see them now, I think our chief was very clear in that he felt that was his highest priority, and if 3 mills is going to leave us without an avenue to get those cameras, and we're already, as I hear it, only getting half of those cameras or some smaller amount of cameras under the proposed 400,000, particularly in light of the last few months, I think that we need to take the chief's professional advice into account. As I said, regardless of my own feelings on whether that should be the highest priority, it's clearly his. So that's my feeling. I'm not happy about the Argentine Community Center situation, but as I understand it, perhaps the original fish is not on the line anymore anyway, or may not be on the line anymore anyway. So I'm not sure, obviously she's not here. I'm not sure how she would feel about that. And I assume we'll be giving Onda back their $70,000 based on this budget proposal. But I guess if I had to pick between these 3, 2 mills would be my choice as well. For this year, just to clarify.
No, thank you. Commissioner Philbrook and then Bynum.
Well, number one, I'm very privileged to be on a commission with people that understand a lot of this stuff, sometimes better than I do, of course, because I'll tell you, I look at this and I feel like, yes, we had come up with a lot of really good ideas to help our community with the funds that we have, and I wish that I were a mathematical genius, because I would find a way. I would find a way to do the 3 mills and still keep all the stuff we want. I don't care if I had to pull it out of the heavens, but that's the way I feel about it. And I appreciate your work that you've done, the work that you guys have done. And 3 is not enough, but if our only choices are to keep, to help keep most of these good ideas that we all have come up with, that our community wants to help improve living in this county and city, then I'd have to go with the 2 at this point.
All right. Mr. Bach, you were going to make a comment, and then Bynum and McKiernan.
I felt I had called Commissioner Margia to let her know that my scenarios were not funding up the Argentine Rec Center. She obviously did not get to see this whole sheet. No one saw it until we passed it out tonight, but she did know that that was not going to be on the list. She asked me about other things. I told her many of the new initiatives we were working on were going to be removed from the budget. And she just asked me to respond back that she did not support that. She was supportive of the original proposed budget and would be good with the 1 mil reduction going forward and allow for the new initiatives that were put forth to be included in the budget. So I wanted to make sure the rest of you had her words. She at least asked me to bring those forward to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Commissioner Bynum and then McKiernan.
To Commissioner Walter's point of the fund balance at the end of 15 being higher than anticipated, I'd like us to consider a conversation around the 2 mil reduction, restoring the cuts, and living with the $1.1 million difference in the fund balance. And I would ask, it seems like it was right about this time last year that we were paid the $1 million fine from Hollywood Casino for not breaking ground on a hotel.
1.4.
1.4 million. So it just strikes me that they're probably going to be writing that check again at some point.
I will say that's an area that we've probably been conservative in our estimates. The 1.4 million, I believe we budgeted that through middle of next year. So we only have half of it in our budget. You know, that is one of those projects that the day they start is the day it ends. So it's not like they have to build the project, it's to move forward with it. So
Sure.
I'm reluctant to say, I believe 100%, 18 months from now, that they will still not have started that. But 12 months, so I was comfortable in giving Kathleen the direction. We talked about it, that not through half of next year, but we only built the penalty in for half of 2017. So those are areas where we work conservatively as to how we estimate those revenues.
So I'm just asking the commission to consider 2 mills, restoring the things that have been cut, and living with a lower fund balance. But I'd be really interested in what Commissioner McKiernan has to say.
It's down to you, Brian.
Exactly.
You go, Brian.
Yeah, exactly. Well, those of you who I talked to, and it was many, know that my original pie in the sky vision for this was a much deeper mill rate reduction than we ever even began to envision with this budget. But I think the reality is, as we try to restore service to the level of excellence and coverage that we really want for our city and county, we realize that we can't get that immediate a reduction in the mill rate and still, and it's a point that Commissioner Murguia made the other night, that if we provide excellence in customer service, and if we provide those services that make people's lives tangibly better in their neighborhoods and in their communities, that does mitigate somewhat the lack of a mill rate reduction. And so I am definitely comfortable. As a matter of fact, I think Commissioner Bynum's proposal of the 2 mil and then using, living with a slightly lower fund balance is a good, thoughtful way to move forward. I think Commissioner Johnson is right, and I'll go back to something that Commissioner Markley and I have talked about before. Commissioner Johnson really asks us to be much more strategic, not only in terms of what initiatives we want, but how we fund the fundamental operations of government going forward, to do more priority-based budgeting types of things, where we consider the what-if scenarios. If we had this much, if we spent this much, what would the impact be? I think we should commit ourselves. Commissioner Walker has certainly been an advocate of doing priority-based budgeting for the last several years, and I think that we would do well to take him up on that and to begin to be very thoughtful about the actual dollars of our initiatives, and not this week before or these 3 days before the budget is due, but truly start now looking for next year's budget and start the process of asking, what if? What if we spent this much? Another thing that I think we really should do, because it's not, we don't have time nor the resources to come to this last day and to say, are there some fundamental savings that we could make within the basic operations of government? To review our procedures, to review our staffing levels, to review our personnel, to review our equipment buying and leasing policies. Those are things that would have to be accomplished over a full year, and that should start today for next year. And again, it goes back to Commissioner Markley had asked about the comp and class study. We have it, but my question would be, have we taken the information from that and used it to help refine our operation in any way? And it speaks to what Commissioner Johnson said a moment ago about being much more forward-looking and strategic and thinking years ahead, not a year ahead, and doing that not just with CMIP, but with our regular operations as well. So I would be comfortable with 2 this year, with the pledge for more in coming years, and that pledge could be 1 or more. And I think Commissioner Bynum has hit on an interesting solution to accept a lower fund balance in the short run to get some of those community enrichment initiatives moving forward.
Commissioner Kane, and do you want to go again? And then Commissioner Walker.
Let Commissioner Walker go first, please.
Commissioner Walker, and then Commissioner Kane.
I would like to ask the finance director, what, do you have the second quarter reports preliminary?
I just got a draft of it, but I haven't looked at it. I just got it this afternoon, actually.
What is our surplus running at?
Surplus.
Well, excess, fund balance. You call it fund balance, I call it surplus.
Oh, I don't know offhand, but at the end of the fiscal year, it's what's shown in the budget. At the end of last fiscal year, 6 months ago.
What I'm getting at is that we don't have the ability independently to look at how the numbers are coming in progressively throughout the year to see where we're at right now. Now, I've been told we have more sales tax that has come in so far this year than was anticipated.
Don't we do a quarterly presentation to the Economic Development
Yes,
Standing
that's
Committee?
why I've just asked if she's got the quarterly numbers ready.
Right.
And so we should have those numbers ready.
Well, when we don't reconcile the books until about 15 or 20 days after the end of the month, so that just came in, and that's why. So,
Well,
we've been looking at the sales tax figures through the middle of the year, and they pretty much are in line with what Lou projected and what we've got in the budget. So, not sure where you're hearing that. I would like to know.
Again, I guess I don't understand how money comes into this organization and we put it down the rabbit hole and we don't get it again. I've been either stupid or grossly naive to believe that we would consider a 6 or 8 mil cut with an extra $12 million. I mean, I knew all along that there would be 1,000 ways to spend this money, but I thought there was this general concurrence somewhere with all of us that we would keep the pledge that was made to do a significant reduction in taxes. I will tell you that 20 years ago they didn't say they were going to reduce 8 mils or 10 mils or whatever number, but they really sold the public the whole idea of the Village West and Western development of retail on the idea that one day this is going to bear fruit, and that fruit is going to be plentiful, and we're going to reduce your taxes. And I think it's been stated repeatedly that in reality, whether we reduce your taxes 1 mil or 2 mils, most everybody that is looking at us on TV or maybe even sitting in this room, you're not really going to notice very much of a bump. It is your bump. I mean, if it's $25, it's your $25. But I really thought we were going to be able to do something really good for this community. And I'm not saying that by spending the money for the things we're doing, these aren't good things. But I'm going to tell you, I've been around, you're probably all tired of how long I've been around here, and maybe the people won't let me be around here much longer next year. But I got to tell you, I have witnessed budgets 32 times at least. And, you know, this budget does what other budgets have done. It gores your ox. The things you want are the things that are looked at. That's not unusual. That's, you know, new spending. I am extremely disappointed on a personal level, not because I think any of you aren't making sense. All of you are making sense. But I really don't think the public, we've kept faith with the public by a 2 mil. I don't even really think we've kept faith with 3 mil, but I have to be realistic because I'm only one vote. This is not what I expected 2 years ago with the promise of a windfall and, you know, new money. And we have found a way to spend it, and I will concede that everything on this list is ideally something we ought to be doing. But, you know, I don't work for Doug. I'm not hired by Doug. I'm hired by the people that elect us, elect me, elect you. And my bosses are not calling me up and say, spend this money on curbs and sidewalks, spend this money on more demolition and mowing, spend this money on a new inspector. I haven't gotten one phone call telling me to spend this thing on anything but tax reduction. So maybe you guys are hearing something different. Maybe sometimes we have to disregard what the public tells us and do what we think is best because we're in a position to know maybe more. But you know, I'm going to end up voting, I guess, with the majority on this, not because I want it, but I'm certainly not happy, and I'm not going to brag about this budget to anybody. I don't think this is nearly enough. Okay, I've made my speech. I'm done.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. I had the luxury of being around here when we had money, and when Mark first got here, we had money.
I had just 1 year.
And then they came in, Kathleen Sebelius came in and eliminated the machinery and equipment, which is, I don't know how many millions of dollars that's been. And then the state has cut us from one end of this county or city to the other. And I don't think anybody foresaw when this $12 million was coming our way that we had lost monies before it had got here. And in fact, we never know what's going to happen. Hopefully the elections will change some of this. And hell, I would have loved to drop to 3 or 4%. And where people could really see a difference. But I think Commissioner Johnson, Bynum, McKiernan, and Markley, all of them are right. I'm not the academician around here. But when something happens at your house and you lose $100 a month of income or $200 a month of income, then you adjust accordingly until you find out a ways to be more prudent with your monies. And I've been there, layoffs and stuff like that. You know, so why don't we take a straw poll for 2%, Mayor?
All right. One of the things I'd like to, I think we need to do that. We need to leave tonight with a consensus, and I do want to take a straw poll. One of the things that I want to think about before we do that is something that Commissioner Bynum said, and just to test the Commission's will on this. We have a pretty aggressive in this fiscal year repayment of about $5 million of accounts that our administrator feels passionately is a responsible thing to do. I agree with that, and the bulk of it is going to all of it's going to that. I think that taking $315,000 out of street repair and resurfacing is too high. I think we could look at splitting that $600,000 loss of revenue in 2017 in the middle line, with half of that coming from reducing the repayment this year of some of those funds. We're putting almost $5 million into those funds. And if we took $300,000 out of that repayment in addition to the $500 he's considering, we would have half of that. And if we reduced our fund balance by $300,000, we could do, I think, a responsible budget with a 2 mil reduction this year and keeping the aggressive priorities that our community has said are our priorities through our survey and through our listening tour. Community wants streets, and they want the weeds cut, and they want the blight removed, and they want some things approved. I think we have to be on a path to increasing our fund balance. I think we're on that path. I think Commissioner Walter's point is well taken. Now, I know the bulk of our increase in 15, though, was a land repayment that is a one-time thing, but I do agree that we are conservative in our budgeting and have been smart with our budgeting that I think we could do with a little bit lower fund balance. I also think that the request for the quiet zone is a small reduction in fund balance on the county side, and it would be the first major capital investment we've made on the county side in a long time, and I think it would be worth doing. So those are some proposals that I think we could get done tonight. We could keep the innovative things that are going to make our city better, make our people feel better about city, because at the end of the day, people have said, what's the real impact on the Legends? What is that? And I've said, it's hard to quantify the impact of a positive morale of people feeling good about their city. And I think the blight reduction, people want to see the weeds cut in the urban areas. How do you quantify that morale boost of seeing the impact? And I was surprised going on the listening tour across all 8 districts. Everybody wanted property tax reduction, but it was right at 2 to 3 mils. There wasn't any group that we met with, and even the survey, that said use half of it or 3/4 of it. Now, I know what was said years ago, but I think as we've talked to the city, we had a good process. And I think the 2 mils is the right message, and I think we can get there with living a little tighter on the fund balance side, both the restoration and the bottom line fund balance. So that's a suggestion I'd like to put out there, but I want to see if there's consensus around that, and then we can move to a straw poll to make sure we have everybody in at least, look, consensus is not the same as unanimity. And everybody has a right to stand outside the majority, and I don't disrespect anyone. Every view I've heard tonight is legitimate. I can't disagree. Commissioner Walker, I can't disagree with you. You're spot on. I think the statements that Commissioner Kane and everybody's made, I think are completely valid. So I don't think we're in a point where, we've got horrible ideas on the table. I think we've got good ideas on the table, and we've just got to come to a consensus. So that's what I'd put out on the table. So Bynum and then Walker.
So we did hear through the community survey and the listening tour that these were things people wanted.
Yep.
So I'm comfortable, and I appreciate putting them in. People said they wanted them, and people also said they wanted a mill levy reduction. Although we did hear from some of the groups during the mayor's listening tour, as they reported out, they were actually, I don't know if you all remember, but some of those groups were willing to forego the tax reduction to get stuff. And nonetheless, I think we are committed to tax reduction here. I'm wanting to clarify what you're asking us to take a straw poll on. 2 things: restoring the cuts, and I just want to understand, are you specifically talking about the water pollution control, or are you talking about all the fund balances?
I think if we said that Mr. Bach has already taken $500,000 out of the water pollution control for this orange budget, or the yellow suggestion. So I would suggest 300,000 more and let him decide which of those funds he would take it out of.
In order to restore the cuts?
Yeah, that would
I want the
restore-
cuts restored.
Huh?
I would like the cuts restored.
So that would restore half the cuts. If we put another 300,000 from fund balance, which is a modest reduction in our fund balance, it would restore the other half of the
Okay,
cuts.
thank you.
Do you have certain ones in mind, Matt? Do you have certain ones in mind?
No, I think if he says $600,000 is the miss down below, that if we did 300,000 out of those funds that we're restoring this year and carried over, and $300,000 from the fund balance in 2017, 300 and 300 would get us to $600,000.
Okay, just wanted to make, thank you.
Commissioner Walker, and then McKiernan.
Maybe Commissioner Bynum said this. All right, everything in this orange column, brown on the television, that's shown as a cut. We're moving all of these over into the green with the 2 mil plus the maneuvering of funds from one, whatever it's called, transfer of funds. So if I go down this list and I ask you, we're going to have a new media relations specialist, third newsletter, horticulturalist, park manager, park ranger, human resources, et cetera, K-State extension, animal control vehicle. All these things are going to be restored to the way they were, and we're going to take part of it from fund balance and also by repaying less money. Is that correct? I don't want to come in on Thursday and find that any of these things right here are still being cut. That's what you're telling me. That's what you're telling me.
Well,
if you will, I will
Mr. Bach.
restate, I believe, what I'm hearing for you all to have. That way it will help me as well. So essentially what I'm understanding is you want the proposal in green as far as what's in the budget. So all the stuff that's on here, you don't see any cuts there. We would add back in, the Argentine Rec Center is going to be there. The body cameras are going to be there. The home repair funding, the AAA. So those are all adds that are going to be built into it. And we're going to accomplish this by taking an additional $300,000 away from fund repayment. Now, this has $400,000 not going to it now, so you're wanting to add an additional $300,000 that goes away, then take the balance of that out of fund balance. So I'd be reducing the fund balance by about actually about $760,000 because the technicality on the mill rate exact amount. And then I believe the mayor said, and you haven't commented, but we would add then $65,000 a year in on the county budget for the quiet zone and reduce the fund balance on the quiet area in the county budget by $65,000. So it's essentially the green budget, all the add in, another mill rate deducted from that side, and then that accounted for by the fund balance repayment, or fund repayment, fund balance, and then the $65,000 on the quiet zone piece.
I think that's what we're saying. Commissioner Markley?
So this is just me personally, I'm just going to say what I think. I like the idea of restoring some of what's going on. Personally, I would take out the home repair funding and the AAA supplies that are brand new expenditures. I wouldn't fund those. I wouldn't fund the park ranger, and I wouldn't fund the grant match funding, even though I'd like to have that for SOAR. I wouldn't fund that. And personally, I wouldn't fund the quiet zone in this budget, but I would restore the other things. That would be me if it were me designing the budget.
And just for clarity, that grant funding is gone in that
Okay.
green proposal.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
The green proposal
Yes.
shows reductions in water pollution control. It shows reduction for the rec center, the grant match fund.
So it just moves the rec center.
It just moves it, yes,
Yeah.
it just moves it.
And same with the 20,000.
And same with the others, so.
Yeah, it just,
The 20,000 is just a
Yeah,
wash.
the green takes out money for fund repayment for water pollution and takes out the money for the grant match. Yeah, the Argentines just is a wash one year to the next, and the quiet zone's a wash between where it was budgeted, and then it adds back in the body cameras, home repair, AAA. And Commissioner, you said the AAA, the home repair, the Ranger.
The Ranger. I'm just saying what my priorities would be if I had to kind of pick and choose. Then we talked about the grant funding.
Okay. Just making sure I got that.
Commissioner Johnson.
In essence, we want our cake and eat it too, Doug. I'm going to just add this because I think it kind of ties into what Commissioner Walters is saying. If we see that revenues are trending better than projected, could it be that the modifications that we are suggesting now will be changed, and that those things that maybe we'll be able to accomplish everything, if not more, as we see the actuals coming in and outperforming. So it sounds like what I was interpreting from what he was saying was that, over the last couple of years maybe, revenues may have been outperforming what we may have budgeted. So I'm just putting that on the table.
All right, so there's a proposal on the table. Let's take it in bite-sized pieces. Let's check first with the straw poll of folks who are willing to go with a 2 mil this year. 2 mil reduction. If you're in favor of that, show of hands. All right. If you are in favor of leveraging our fund balance and our payment of things back to bring back the cuts from orange to green, is there willingness to do that? I'll just take a straw poll. The stuff on green stays.
Or are we just doing generally at this point?
I think we're just looking generally at this point. Are we willing to do it generally, to take the cuts from this and move it and restore the green to the green with the cuts the additional cuts that came out of the yellow? Does that make sense?
Generally speaking.
So generally speaking, I'd just like to see a show of hands, just a straw poll. Are people generally willing to do that? All right. So we have a general agreement on 2 mils this year, and I'm going to advocate, I'm telling you, coming in next year, I'm looking for another mill reduction next year. I think we need to do it, and I'm going to push for it. The other piece is,
Let's set our goal a little higher. Why don't we look for 3 mils and settle for 1 if we have to?
I support that.
Do this again next year, and we'll go from there.
That's right, that's right. Well, we do have, in October, we're going to have our next strategic planning, and we're going to start with strategic planning in October, and this is the conversation we need to continue to have.
I think we need to continue to look at not just next year, but two years out, 3 years out, what would that look like over time? And I'm going to continue to suggest this because I believe, I'm committed that this is the right way that we need to proceed over a period of time. I probably won't be popular about it, but I think this is the right way for us to do it.
Well, you're popular with me. Thank you.
All right, the next piece is, we've had a discussion about the quiet zone. The proposal is to take it out of the 65,000, and it's an ongoing expense, 65, 65, 65, and then it grows to 165 or so in the out years, to do the first phase implementation, which would basically it would make all of Edwardsville a quiet zone. And there was a discussion in this group that we wanted to ask the Edwardsville to contribute to that and to partner with us in that. And so, but I think the position is on the table to add that into the county side budget, looking at fund balance, reducing fund balance a little bit in that, and I want to get to that consensus, yes.
Does that mean that we're asking them to, or we are requiring them to? Two different concepts.
Well, I think at this hour, we need to, if we don't have it in the budget, there's no point in doing anything.
Well,
And then I
agree
think
with
we
that,
can go.
but the intent,
I think the intent is to go to talk to them about it and bring it back to this group. If they say no, then we're going to need to decide if we're going to fund it entirely on the unified government county side, and what percentage would be an acceptable percentage from this group. But I think that's going to take a project manager working that to do some work. So
How much money are you talking about?
it would be, I think it'd be 2.2 million over 20 years. And so it would be, I think the formula we have is about $65,000 in the first 3 years because it's temp notes. And then that would push it out. It would go up from there to about 165,000 for the remaining years.
So if we talk to the Bonner and Edwardsville, and they say, no, we're still gonna have another crack at this?
I think that from a policy perspective, we need to embed this in the budget if there's a possibility of doing it. And then if Edwardsville comes back and says we're not putting a nickel in it, then I think this group's going to have to decide what to do at that point. Fair enough?
Yeah, as long as we revisit it.
So the consensus, oh, I'm sorry.
No, so as I'm looking at the green version, the quiet zone shows 20,000 in 2016, so it would go to 65 in 2017. Is that what we're talking about?
It would be I believe an additional $65,000 would be added to that.
So the number in 2017 would be 85?
Yes.
Okay, just so I understand. Thank you.
Commissioner Walker.
Is the proposal then that if Edwardsville and Bonner say, yeah, go ahead, but we're not contributing, what are we voting on? If they're not in, we're not going to be in? Is that?
Well, I talked to Tiny the other day.
If they're not in it, the deal is dead? Is that what we're saying here tonight?
I think, this is my view, that we need, and Commissioner Walters, see if you're agreeable to this. If we don't put budget authority in, we can't do it. We've got to have the budget authority for it to keep the conversation alive. If we put the budget authority in and plan to do it, then the project as it comes forward, obviously, we would have to vote on the project. We would have to see the scale of it. We'd have to see how it works. There's some hope that there's some value engineering and some possible grants that could go into it. So I think the key is to put the authority in it now, and then to work it and to talk and to continue the conversation with. At this point, we'd be talking to Edwardsville because Bonner Springs would not be in Bonner Springs jurisdiction. And I think we could put it in pending conversations with Edwardsville, and then we can decide. We can have that vote then if we decide that if Edwardsville is against it, then I think we have to decide that. Yes, Commissioner
I would
McKiernan.
agree with that. I have no problem with short-term budget authority to move the ball forward and see if they are agreeable to a partnership. But as I said the other night, I'm really concerned if we don't have partnership and if they are going to benefit from it and yet expect us to take the full burden of the cost, then I'm not sure that's a wise investment.
Okay. All right. So
Well, I might just say, they are Wyandotte County residents also. So when we meet as a commission, we are representing those folks.
So all of the money for this would come county side only.
That's what's proposed.
that's what's proposed.
Thought we're moving it around.
Okay. So in the short run, so we're committing then to, what's our total payout then over time?
I think it's 2.2.
Over 20 years? Or 2.2 bonded?
Yes. 2.2 bonded over 20 years.
The actual payment is over time. 2.2 would be the
Okay, so,
projected cost of the project.
so when we say, okay, that's interesting. So we're saying that because it's not being paid out of our city side, then we're not asking for any city side out of Edwardsville, and we're not asking any city side out of Bonner Springs. It will all be funded by the county. We are the county. Therefore, we choose to do it or we choose not to do it, and it really doesn't matter if we have a partnership.
Well,
Is that-
no, I think what is being proposed is that we talk to Edwardsville
Okay.
about them funding part of it also, and that would be from this Edwardsville
From the city side, because the city of Edwardsville would yield a benefit from this if it were executed.
Well, Wyandotte County residents.
Wyandotte County
In my
residents.
opinion.
Okay, but again, you're saying you're going to go talk to Edwardsville, so the reason to talk with Edwardsville is to see if they would commit some of their city to it.
That's what I sense is the will of the commission, that they would like Edwardsville to put some money into the project.
Okay.
In addition to what the residents are already putting in as county
Residents of the county. Okay.
I'll be honest, Commissioner Walters. Don't need. I have not got a lot of positive feedback on this project. Maybe the people that support it aren't the kind to wave the flag and write you emails or post on your Facebook. I agree with your concept that as the unified government, it's kind of been my opinion that, and this goes back to 1998, that from day one, because they wanted to retain autonomy, independence, whatever you want to, for whatever reasons they did, they have kind of received the short stick on attention. Just my opinion. We had sci-fi funds. It really wasn't a lot of money. I guess, you know, I'm willing to let it go to Edwardsville and see if they'll participate. But I would urge you, frankly, if we're going to spend this kind of money, I'd like to do a partnership with Edwardsville where Edwardsville and or Bonner, I'm not excluding Bonner, decided how we spent the money over 20 years or 10 years. You want to call it sci-fi? I mean, obviously we're issuing county debt probably to do it, but you know, it's hard for me to get a real handle on what the people of Edwardsville want. I assume they want the same things we do: curbs and sidewalks, new roads, new housing, some retail development, those kind of things. And I'm perfectly willing to entertain proposals that meet the needs of Edwardsville and Bonner and cost money. If it's the quiet zone and that is of benefit to the redevelopment or the development of the K32 corridor through that section, I'm in the boat with you. If that's not what is the best vehicle for Edwardsville, I'll still be in a boat with you. It'll just be a different one. I represent that district, and I think we owe them something. Now, we may widely vary on what we think that is, but you know, them having a decision in how we spend money in their jurisdiction is critically important to me. So I'm going to rely on whatever comes out of that dialogue, and if this is not what they want, I would hope all of you would still be in the boat with Commissioner Walters to develop a funding mechanism in Edwardsville and Bonner to be a partner with them in developing their communities, because they are Wyandotte County, as Jim says. And what's good for them is good for us, as what's been good for us has been good for them, i.e. the agreement on the casino. So that's where I'm sitting on the quiet zone. I would agree to go ahead with the embedding of funding with what I just said, that if Edwardsville does not want to do that, then I think we need to sit down with them and say, what can we do to make your community better? And how can we fund that? And what will you participate in? Or will you participate? Either way, I think we have, as a commission, some duty to improve parts of Edwardsville. I mean, you know, I have my own ideas, but I don't live there and I don't vote there in their community, and You know, I've thought for years a sewer running from the top of I-70 all the way down through the middle of Edwardsville to connect it up and spread out would be a tremendous asset. But that's just me. So that's where I'm at right now tonight. And hopefully, I know you believe in this idea, Jim, and hopefully Edwardsville will see the wisdom of this idea, but I'm not precluding other alternatives to help Edwardsville prosper as a community.
All right, so we've had a good discussion about this. Is Commissioner McCarron?
Well, I just want to agree with Commissioner Walker. I think that if we, and it really reframes, and I have to confess I wasn't thinking of this as totally county money, but if we reframe it from the county fund perspective, then effectively what we're asking to do is to spend a sum of money, 2.2 or whatever it is, for the benefit of county residents who happen to be in 3 different cities. And what I'd like to do is what Commissioner Walker said, is allocate it now and then have a thoughtful strategic discussion with the representatives of those other cities, those other city governments, and have a collective visioning as to whether or not this particular project is the best source or yields the best benefit of investing county money on behalf of the city, the county residents who happen to live in 3 different cities. So I'd say let's budget it in, let's get budget authority for this, let's have a thoughtful discussion, and if it appears that those other local governments do agree with us that this would be of benefit to the people who live in their cities who are also county residents, then I think we can come back and revisit it to move forward.
All right.
And I also think that Commissioner Walters should be, I'm volunteering him for work. I think when these strategic discussions go on, I don't want this to be staff to staff entirely. Staff needs to be there, but the commission representative that has the most knowledge of this project and can articulate the benefits the best is Commissioner Walters. I mean, I have a general idea that whistles stop blowing, you know, as they go through town. But I think I want somebody from the commission meeting with their representatives and partake. Now, if Jim doesn't want to do that, I'm not going to make him do it, obviously. But I think I want somebody from the commission there involved intimately in the details of the discussion.
All right, so is there consensus to embed this in the budget as described? And I'll just take a straw poll if you're willing to embed this in the budget. All right, so it's in the budget on the county side. All right, so we have also addressed, I want to go back to Commissioner Markley also made some recommendations. Do we want to, we can walk through those and see if we want to do individual ones like that. Commissioner, you suggested the ones you were willing not to fund included refresh my memory.
I wouldn't do the 2 new ones, the home repair and AAA supplies. And then personally, I would say the park ranger is not my highest priority. I don't know. The other 2, the intern and the inspector.
What was the other one?
My sense was that those were sort of integral to that whole SOAR package, so I left those alone. But I mean, at some point we got to stop spending money, guys.
So your suggestion on the bottom is home repair funding and AAA supplies.
And then that offsets the extra. So in the green budget, as Doug mentioned, the water pollution control fund, he only took it down. There's only 400,000 there. Where in the orange budget there's 500,000. So if we add back in that extra 100,000, I'm not making sense, but
I get it. So are people, and in terms of let's take these separately, the home repair funding and the AAA supplies, are people willing to forego those 2 new spending items? No? Commissioner?
Question, if the ask, as I recall it, for the home repair funding was like 150,000. Was it 200?
This at least gets a pilot.
Can you turn your microphone back around, please?
The ask was 200,000. This at least starts a pilot program. and gets us started on a potential home repair program for those citizens.
Okay, that's all I needed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there a consensus? I'm just going to do a straw poll because it's on the table. If you would like to remove those two items, would you raise your hand?
Wait a second. Could we reduce that down $50,000?
It's sitting at 50
Okay.
to save it.
The AAA is Area Agency on Aging, in case people wonder. Area Agency on Aging.
It's not our memberships to the auto club, darn.
It's not the auto club. We are self-insured on all of our vehicles, so if we get a flat tire, it's on us. The home repair funding and the Area Agency on Aging, those two areas are $50,000 each in the green. They're the last two lines on the green. If you would like to remove those two, let's just take a straw poll. Just show of hands if you would remove those funding.
It's just me who hates spending money. Sorry, guys.
Commissioner Markley, thank you.
I also, and you guys know this, we've had this discussion a million times. I just have a problem with funding things at the last minute. And we do it every year, and every year I vote no on them, and every year I get overruled. And it's fine, I understand, but the whole point of starting the budget in February is so we're not funding things the week of the budget. So I always have a problem with it, but.
We do appreciate the consensus. I will vouch for Commissioner Markley. She votes no every year on the additional funding at the last minute. Commissioner Philbrook.
Angela, would you please hold our feet to the fire this fall when we start on the when we get in there?
I try.
You have done a wonderful job of that. I mean, look where we'd be if you guys hadn't worked at it this hard. But it's always going to happen.
I know it. I just bang my drum, and you guys can keep banging yours. But every year I bang it.
That's why I brought those earplugs.
That's right. All right, the last item is the park ranger. Commissioner Markley had suggested not funding the park ranger. Is there any discussion about the park ranger?
Can I ask you to explain that?
Well, I was just so, when we first sat down and looked at this, and I was going, okay, what is the thing I'm saddest about losing? I said, okay, I'd really like to still have that inspector. Didn't really care about the intern, but I understand that the idea is for the intern to help manage that whole process. So I was like, okay. Actually, the intern is not to manage the whole process. Well, to make very clear. To participate in the process, yes. It's part of that whole group. So as I was going down the list, I was saying, what am I going to be saddest to lose? And all that I noticed was that I didn't particularly go, oh my God, we're going to lose the park ranger. So in thinking of how can we not spend money, that was my thought.
Okay, so is there a groundswell to not have the park ranger? Because Commissioner Markley's. Okay, so if you'd be willing to eliminate the park ranger, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to say that falls short of a consensus. Yes, Commissioner Townsend.
So I know what we're losing the possibility of. What would this park ranger do if hired?
Joe, you want to go ahead and describe how that initiative was put forward and what they would be doing?
Yeah, so Jeremy and the park staff really would like to have more of a presence, especially in the signature parks. They see increases in vandalism. They see increases in just kind of violations in general. And this would be really a supplement to what the sheriff already provides. The sheriff does it by district, so they're in and out of the parks in that district, but they don't focus on the parks. So they were really looking for a person that would focus on our signature parks, Bonner, the Lake, and Pearson, and City Park. And be there when they're busy, be there to be the ambassador for the parks, and be there to help curb vandalism and increase the customer service experience. So for those of you that do remember, the Parks Department did have their own rangers at one point, and those were transferred over to the sheriff's office. And so they kind of they missed the ambassador piece of that. They miss the customer service that they get, and they miss the additional eyes in the parks. And this would just be a way to start to bring that back into focus for the Parks Department.
Okay, Commissioner Townsend and then Walker.
So we're talking about like Wyandotte County Lake as opposed to Parkwood or Kensington. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, I think
City
this would be
okay.
Go ahead.
No.
I guess I was trying to say that we wanted the focus to be on the signature parks. It's not that we want to ignore the other ones, but again, the vandalism and it's where the people are at more of the time than not, and that's the signature parks.
Can you list those again, please?
Yeah, so we were talking about City Park, Wyandotte County Park in Bonner Springs, City Park and Pearson Park,
Pearson and the county lake.
and the lake, sorry. Yeah.
All right.
Well, aside from the fact that I have never understood why, when we transferred them into the sheriff's department, we don't have jobs that they bid there that are park ranger. That is, you know, if it's necessary for them to wear a different uniform than a deputy sheriff, or, you know, be more of a, you know, ambassador or greeter, I don't understand why a deputy sheriff is not capable of doing that. They were capable of being park rangers and then became sheriff's deputies. So I'm not really sure why you can't say, Sheriff Ash, assign some people to these parks, and their job is not to go out there and, you know, necessarily enforce the law, but be a greeter, be a person that, you know, is knowledgeable about the parks, drives around the park, stays right in the park all the time. It seems like to me that we did miss the boat. I didn't have any problem changing them because there was no reason for the disparity in salary between a park ranger and a sheriff's deputy. That was driving that when it was done. But I still don't understand why the sheriff can't have 3 or 4 bid positions. It probably would be a junior. It wouldn't be junior because you got to be in the jail 10 years, I think, before you actually get out of the jail into the office. So I suppose you'd have to have some seniority before you could actually bid these jobs. But I don't understand that. And then I wanted a clarification. The fire station that we're talking about, presumptively located in Mike King's district, you're planning to build this from savings that we accrue from the administration of the union contract. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir.
So an example of that would be, we have $1.7 million in overtime. Now, if we didn't have that 1.7 million, I assume that 1.7 million would be a pretty good down payment on the beginning of a fire station, correct? So that's the plan.
Yeah, that can work within it, definitely.
Okay, I just wanted it clear. Thank you.
All right, so the park ranger. So if you would like to remove the park ranger, would you please raise your hand? Let's see if there's consensus to remove the park ranger. Okay, so we have,
I have an alternative.
well, and you did offer an alternative. So we have 4 that's short of a consensus or even a majority to remove the park ranger. But I think Mr. Bach taking the suggestion of Commissioner Walker back to the sheriff is a good one, just in terms of looking at broadening our base of how we support our parks.
And maybe I'll offer too, I think that's a specific area we can discuss as we're doing our law enforcement study that is really underway next week. As they get into it, you know, that they could do a little bit of focus on where we were with the parks and the Rangers program and what has changed from that, and are we missing something in regard to that, and maybe open up part of that conversation with, make sure they're visiting with the parks director and that staff about how we feel the service is being covered.
All right, I think we've reached some consensus around the yellow sheet on all the issues that have been brought up thus far. I do want to take about a 10-minute break, and then we will come back and wrap up the remainder of our meeting tonight and look ahead to Thursday. Look ahead. call the meeting back to order. We need to walk through commission meeting action items. This is for tomorrow night.
Thursday night.
Thank you. That's what I meant to say.
Go scare Doug.
The only meaningful days are commission meeting days, so the next one is, so Thursday, and unless we hear something different than what we have tonight, I do not believe that we need a budget session at 5 o'clock on Thursday. We do have room for that, but I think we have consensus on all the items before us, so I don't think we need that 5 o'clock session. We will have a 6 o'clock executive session on litigation, and so we will have that, and then at 7 o'clock, we will have planning and zoning and budget.
Make sure we all get an email to make sure our calendars are correct on that.
Yes, because it has moved a little bit, so yes, we will. We'll make sure to get the corrected information out that no budget hearing 5 o'clock Thursday unless something unravels before adjournment tonight.
No unraveling.
No unraveling. A 6 o'clock executive session on Thursday for litigation. And then 7 o'clock we have planning and zoning. And then we also have our final budget approval, which includes, if as we all know now, because we've all been through a couple of these, a number of action items. So I'm going to ask Mr. Bach to lead us through the action items so we will know what we are voting on specifically on Thursday.
All right, so as in past years, there are several actionable items that don't have anything really related closely to what you've all put your time working through, but there are ones that are put before you as the governing body of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. So there's 6 actionable items. These are all come out in your budget today. The first one is going to be regarding the library mill rate. That was submitted as a status quo mill rate. So as you all painstakingly go through how you can reduce increases that have come in from different things, this one is coming in at a status quo mill rate. Another one will be the SMID mill rate. We've had a lot of information go through on that, so that is being set forth to allow that jurisdiction to collect the revenues as that was just previously adopted to go forward.
You might be asking the same thing. Is that with the same borders or with different borders?
Yeah, that's a good question. What you will have earlier on the agenda is the reduction in the size of the borders. So you will officially adopt that before we get to the budget approvals. The actual approved budget that you're approving was done based on what the amount of budget would be for the whole area, but the mill rate is going to be still the same. So they'll just collect less than what we advertise as that number.
Now, I have another question. Back on the library mill rate, is this based on what was recommended by the library board themselves?
Yes.
Was it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we as staff don't do anything to that. We don't.
Well, I was just
We just
asking
forward it
because I
as they
hadn't seen
send
that.
it.
Okay.
Third item on the list will be the water pollution control sewer rate. This is the, last year we hoped that we're at the 7% increase as we were moving toward our consent decree and collecting the money necessary in order to follow those guidelines going forward. That'll go into effect on January 1. Item 4 is the resolution that adopts our pilot with the BPU. This pilot rate stays flat as what has been in the previous year.
Commissioner Walker.
It will come as no surprise to those of you that will recall, I have voted against this for 3 straight years. I intend to vote against it again, and will continue to vote against it until we show some good faith in keeping the pledge that was made when it was raised. Now, I may not recall it exactly, but when we raised it, we didn't raise it. Most of us that are on here didn't raise it. When it was raised, we were told a couple of years later, that a couple of years later we were going to start reducing it at 1% a year. And now that we got the money, we don't want to give it up. And whether you realize it or not, everybody who is a taxpayer is a ratepayer, almost virtually. There may be a few hundred people that don't use utilities that we haven't found, but I can't. Okay, well, meant within the city, within the BPU's jurisdiction. And so when you put 1% on them, it's the same as hitting them with a 1% tax, because everybody's paying it. And we're not doing anything to reduce it. And I think we should be. I've thought that since the beginning. So when I vote no, don't any of you be surprised.
Item 5 is the resolution, this doing the community development block grant budget. So as that has been presented, and I will say this is probably one of the better budget seasons we've had in working that, as you focused your time on that outside of the $345 million budget and put forth a good budget plan to move that forward, and that'll be adopted according to that. And item 6 is what we've all been here for, and that's the approval of the proposed budget. So assuming the items above are all done in accordance with how they've been presented, that allows us to approve the budget, which contemplates all those sources of revenue that come into it, and we will have the appropriate yellow sheet as a blue sheet to attach to the agenda on Thursday night to allow for the changes that you've made tonight to account for that. I'm also going to note that in this year's resolution for this, Ms. Von Atchen has submitted additional language regarding the capital projects. As you all recall, as we go through and we approve what we're doing for projects now and say this is what we want to buy as we going forward, Kathleen's of the belief, and has seen this in many other jurisdictions, where we can adopt the appropriate resolutions now, so then we don't have to keep continuing to approve those 2-3 times more later in the year, the same projects you've already approved. We can come back and update you and say this is what we're doing, but we don't have to go through those. Now, we have a few things we have to work through with bond counsel to get their final blessings on that, but we're hopeful that this will get it done one time instead of having to do it 3 more times later in the year in order to move forward with your action tonight or Thursday night. So that will complete all the budget action items. Are there any questions on any of that? Okay. The last item on our list is clerical corrections to the budget document, and I'll turn this over to Reginald Lindsay and let him step through, and I think Reggie's going to have all the corrected pages. They'll be submitted up to the commission office, and they'll be able to put them in place, but I'm going to have Reggie walk through those now.
There are 5 clerical corrections in the budget document this year. The first 2 were in the financial overview, the summary of budget and expenditures. We replaced that page. The dedicated sales tax read wrong on there, so we'll replace that. Then also the alcohol fund summary. It had the wrong columns as far as reading the 2016 amended. It read 2015 amended instead. And then also in the department programs, we changed a special community grants department to read Wyandotte Economic Development Grants as one of the divisions on that page. And then also in CMIP projects, we replaced the key that described that was going on. We had a misspelling on there. And then also in some of the debt projects, some of the lines were missing, but the totals tallied up to what they should have equaled. So what we did was unhide those columns. And we have updated the actual budget document on the spread on the website, the internet, and the intranet. So it is up to date for you all now. And then we also have hard copies for you to put into your documents.
Okay. It's not surprising that in a 300-plus page document, you might have clerical errors. So we appreciate your diligence in getting those corrected for us and getting us into the document. All right. Any further questions about the budget? Because this wraps up our 2017 budget session tonight. All right, no tears. It's been I think we should commend Doug and his staff for a terrific job.
Yeah, I don't understand how you guys can do it with all of us commissioners throwing boundaries and all kinds of extra stuff in your way, but we really do appreciate the hard work.
All right, so we will be, again, I'll reiterate one last time, we do not have a budget session at 5 o'clock Thursday. We start at 6 with a executive session for litigation, and 7 o'clock will be planning and zoning, and we have lots of chickens. I think we have a record number of chickens Thursday, so look forward to your agenda.
No.
1,000 chickens.
They voted it down.
Okay, so anyway, look forward to that, read up, and it's a lot of chickens,
1,000 plus.
and then we will adopt our budget as we just rehearsed tonight. We are adjourned. Thank you.
1,000 plus